Hi guys, I'm Cleopatra and you're welcome to today's teaching. Today we'll be talking about childhood abuse, also known as child trauma, the wound it leaves in the emotion and the psyche of a person, the profound impact it has on our lives, on adulthood productivity, on our relationships, and most importantly, how to heal from these wounds. I'd like to point out that references that we'll be making to parents, guardians, and caregivers in this video is in no way encouraging us to lay blame on them or to get bitter at them. Laying blame on people who were present as at the time of our abuse only intensifies the pain. It only makes us grow more bitter, makes us feel more helpless than we already feel. And that's not the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video is just to help us to reflect on our childhood, see if some of these things that will be said, if we resonate with some of them, if we can actually find them in our present day life, and with an open mind and a gentle heart to see if we can implement the processes that will be mentioned to start our healing. Because some of our current day behaviors, some of our addictions, some of our aversions, they can all be avoided. Procrastination, all manner of struggles that we face as adults right now can be traced back to some of the pains and the wounds and the abuses that were inflicted on us as children. So let's just go straight into it. Now, as children, when children are growing up, they require a lot of support and a lot of safety from parents and caregivers. The support and safety we're talking about here is not just, food on the table, clothes on their bodies, a roof over their head. No. Supporting children and keeping them safe is not just from not allowing them to put their hand to fire. No. It's about supporting them, allowing them to grow as their own person, supporting them emotionally, supporting them psychologically, supporting them physically. How do we support children emotionally? We allow them to experience and express different variety of emotions. Now, when a child is growing up and not allowed to experience emotions, let alone express those kind of emotions, what happens is that over time, the child starts getting used to denying, repressing, and suppressing their emotions, certain kind of emotions. They start to feel that their emotions are not worthy of being felt or of being heard. Another profound impact is that, when children are not allowed to express or experience some kind of negative emotions, they are robbed of the ability to learn how to process those emotions, and that's where certain level of addictions in the future comes from, because with an inability to experience and process certain emotions, people start looking for how to cope with those sad feelings later on. For example, a child stumbled on a rock and hurt his or her toe or knee, and then you find that instead of the parent, while the child is crying, of course, instead of the parent to console the child, allow them to cry, you see that the parent will call the child and even threaten to beat up the child more if the child doesn't stop crying. In some cases, you see that a child is angry or sad, maybe at the loss of a friend or at the loss of a toy, and instead of allowing the child to experience that emotion, then console the child, that's the support, and then tell the child that it's okay to let go of things, it's okay to lose things, pet the child and encourage the child. That supporting children and keeping them safe has a lot to do with not neglecting their emotional, their psychological, and their physical needs. Being there for them, allowing them to be, allowing them to experience themselves, allowing them to express themselves, allowing them to be comfortable in their own skin, allowing them to find out for themselves what their needs are. That's keeping them safe, not making them feel out of place, not making them feel stupid. And the thing is, at that stage, what children will do and some of the things they will want to try out, some of the things they want to experiment is necessary, because that's how they get to define themselves. That's how they get to create a sense of identity. But when they are not supported or guided properly, there's a lot of feeling of lack of self, low self-worth, feeling of hatred and endangerment that is involved. So supporting children and keeping them safe is about allowing them to experience, allowing them to try, allowing them to be, supporting them emotionally. How do we support children emotionally? When a child is crying and needs petting, you should be there to pet them. Yeah, someone will say, are we trying to make children soft? No, it's not about making children soft, neither is it about making them hard either. It's about allowing them to experience, first of all levels of emotions, whether joy, pain, sorrow, grief, sadness, of course, to a particular degree. When you see that a child hurt themselves, and they are feeling pain, instead of saying, oh, keep quiet, shut up, are you the first? Look at what you're crying about. This, blah, blah, blah. Is it that small injury that you're crying over? And this, is it because somebody pushed you that you're crying? Why didn't you hit him back? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? If a child is in pain, if a child is feeling sad, the best thing to do is give them some little time to experience that emotion. And then the role of a parent or guardian at that time should be to step in, encourage them, support them, let them know that it is not okay to wallow in that emotion forever. If the child was crying over the loss of a toy or something, you can let them know that it's normal to lose things in life. They're definitely going to get another one later on. There are so many kinder ways you can help a child go through, difficult emotions. But to shut a child out and just say, don't cry or keep quiet, in some instances, it's even the parent or the guardian or the family member who beat you up and you are crying. That's that same person that's going to tell you that if you don't stop crying, I'm going to beat you more. And I find that in many cases, it's not a threat. If the child doesn't stop crying, they'll actually beat the child more. Here are some of the things that I think encompass lack of emotional, physical, and psychological support. Children being taught that it's wrong to have their own opinion. Some children were not allowed to play. Some children were not allowed to be spontaneous. Some children were shunned for trying out new things. Some children were publicly embarrassed and criticized by their parents and their caregivers. Some children were blamed for their parents or their caregivers' unhappiness, lack of joy, financial support. Some children didn't receive any physical care or attention from their parents or their caregivers. Some children were never hugged, they were never kissed, they were never cuddled, they were never played with. That physical attention, holding the child, petting the child, playing with the child. Some children were severely punished for being different in specific areas. If some children grew up in households where there was a unique pattern of behavior that was accepted, or if everybody had an idea that was in uniform and the child had a different opinion, the child would be punished or beaten severely. Children have been punished, abused verbally and physically for just wanting to do things differently. Some children were not allowed to play at all. Some children were highly restricted from making friends. Some children were neglected to a point whereby they played and hurt themselves and hurt other people. These are all forms of physical, emotional, and psychological neglect. Some children, at every stage of their life that they tried doing something new, maybe try learning something, playing with others in some form of children competition, if they didn't come out the best, they will be insulted, mocked publicly, or beaten. Now, we may look back at our childhood and say, oh, but that happens to a lot of children. Of course, it happens to a lot of children, and that's why a lot of people are traumatized. That's why we are seeing a lot of bad behavior, a lot of addiction, sex addiction, porn addiction, drugs addiction these days. Because when these series of treatments are perpetrated on a daily basis over years throughout a person's life, you can imagine that as a child is growing up, they are constantly having to go through this, where they are being shut up, they are being beaten physically, beaten with sticks or belts, and that they are being abused verbally, harsh insults being riddled upon them. When they try something new and they fail, they are insulted, ridiculed, put to shame, whether be it in public or private. They are not allowed to be spontaneous, they are not allowed to think outside the box. When all these things continue over the years, what it does is that it leaves a wound in the heart of the child, it leaves a wound in the psyche of the child. It creates a distorted reality whereby the child starts to identify with pain, bitterness, low self-worth. It creates an image that is not true of the child. It makes the child not to be able to identify their true needs, not to be able to know what they like. The child is not able to know what he or she likes. The child is not able to voice out their opinion. They think their opinion is useless. The child is unable, or the child becomes terrified of trying new things. The child becomes terrified of making friends. Over time, over the years, when a child grows up in a family or around parents or caregivers who constantly do these things to them, there's a wound in the heart, there's a wound in the mind, there's a feeling of endangerment, there's a feeling of I'm not safe in this world, oh, this world is a harsh place, oh, people are mean. There's a feeling of I don't matter, my needs don't matter, my voice don't matter, my opinion is irrelevant, I am not that important. Things like this. With such sense of endangerment and not being loved and all that. These are some of the things that happen to them later on in life. You feel deep down something is really wrong with you. You experience anxiety at the thought of doing new things. You lack a strong sense of self or identity. And even if you want to create an identity, you choose the identity of a rebel or misfit. You people please a lot. You are more alive to conflict than peace. Hard things and you have trouble letting go of anger. You feel guilty for standing up for yourself. You often feel inadequate and not good enough. You always want to be an A+ student, an overachiever, a winner thing. You feel you will fail even before you start trying out new things. Even when you try out new things, you find it difficult to finish them. You are highly critical of yourself. You are highly critical of making mistakes. You are rigid. You are perfectionist. Everything must go a particular way. It has to be perfect. It has to be in order. It has to meet the approval of yourself and of other people. If not, it's not good enough. You feel ashamed of expressing strong emotions, negative in day. You rather hold your anger down till it turns to full-blown rage. You have sex with people you really don't have sex with, or when you don't even want to have sex. You are ashamed of your body all by yourself, even if no one is putting you to shame. You get addicted to porn, you get addicted to alcohol, to marijuana, to drugs, to heroin, all sorts. You lack trust in yourself, in your capabilities, your ability to do things, and you take that same distrust and put it in other people. You avoid conflict at all, no matter what. You feel more responsible for other people than even yourself. You put your needs aside constantly, like it doesn't matter. You don't feel close to your mother, you don't feel close to your father, you don't feel close to some of your siblings. Struggle to say no. There's a deep sense of fear that you will be abandoned one day in your relationships. So you cling on to relationships no matter what, no matter how toxic it is. You carry a very serious sense of toxic shame and guilt over the years. Now, if you relate to a lot of these things if you find that most of these things I just said are things that are happening in your life. You're afraid to start new things. You use sex, drugs, porn, alcohol as coping mechanism. I'm not saying people who drink alcohol or smoke marijuana are always trying to cope with childhood wounds, no. But as many of these signs that you find that you can relate to, please know that it is because you are struggling with childhood wounds, because you have unhealed wounds from your childhood. You're battling with serious childhood trauma. Now, some of the ways that this plays out in our lives, we become codependent or counter-dependent. Being codependent is that since we don't have a sense of self, since we are not complete, since we are not whole, we like to merge with other people. So we create friendships that sort of completes us. We get into relationships that we think sort of completes us. That part of ourselves that was not allowed to be formed during our childhood, that part of identity that we were not able to create in our childhood, we start to look for it in other people. That sense of neediness kicks in, because some of the profound impacts of childhood abuse, like I just listed, is that we feel more responsible for other people. This is because as a child, when your emotional and your physical needs were not met, when you were not allowed to do things you wanted, over the years you got to a point where you didn't even know what you wanted. So when you're now an adult, you try to merge yourself with people who you think can give you what you want, even if ideally, in the real sense of it, those people cannot give you what you want. You still somehow believe that they can give you what you want if you stay there long enough, if you merge yourself with them long enough and get from them what you want. We become heavily codependent because we don't know how to attune to our needs. We don't know how to value our needs. We don't know how to be whole. We don't know how to be complete. So we must be with someone or with people who we think can provide those needs for us. And what this does is that it puts a lot of burden on the other person. This is because ideally you're supposed to know what you want. You're supposed to be responsible for yourself. You're supposed to be a go-getter for yourself first and foremost. But then, since you lack the ability to do that, you are going to be expecting that from the next person, and you're going to think that it's right to make that demand of that person. And that person, to some extent, they can do that, but not fully. And that's where issues in relationships come up sometimes, because when we don't know how to cater to ourselves, when we don't even know what our needs are, when we don't even know who we are, and we expect someone to make that definition for us, to provide those needs for us, the person can only do that out of the limited information and knowledge they have about us. And sometimes they will do it wrongly, and then we will pick an offense. And we will do this because we feel that since we are giving ourselves so much and we are going all out to please them, to put ourselves aside for them, they should be in the perfect position to do the same thing for us, and they should do it for us exactly how we want to do it. So we spend more time being hyper vigilant, watching out for what we want to get from the other person instead of focusing on ourselves. So codependency is one of the ways it impacts us profoundly. Also, if someone is not codependent, they become a narcissist. A narcissist is someone who becomes self-absorbed. It's not perpetrating codependent or counter-dependent tendencies in adulthood due to their childhood trauma. Some of the tendency they can perpetrate is that of a narcissist. A narcissist is someone who, due to their childhood abuse and their childhood neglect, has a serious void. They lack they lacked love, affection, and attention during their childhood. So, as adults, they are ready to go all out to get that attention. You know, two children can grow up in the same home and they will respond to abuse differently. For empaths, they are the ones that will do the people pleasing, the shrinking in, withdrawing, thinking very little of themselves. Now, for a child that comes out as a narcissist from an abused family or an abused background, is not going to people please. Instead, that he or she is going to be like, no, I'm going to get all the attention for myself. I'm going to be perfect. You see narcissism in people who think the world is at their beck and call. They feel they are go-getters. They want all attention. They are ready to put anybody down to get whatever they want. It's their way or the highway. They are not even going to be kind to you for any reason. You see them making statements like, I have the perfect this, I know the perfect this, oh, this that I'm going to get is the perfect this, always trying to compare themselves to other people. But most importantly, as a response to their abuse, as a response to feeling neglected and not having enough love in their childhood, or not having enough emotional or psychological support and attention from their parents or caregivers, what narcissists do when they eventually grow up is that every place they walk into, every person they meet, they want to suck life out of that person, they want to suck the attention out of that person. So yes, some of the ways: codependency, narcissism. Another trait of or another narcissistic tendency is an inability to empathize with other people, inability to, you know, feel what other people are. The narcissists have a tendency to be extremely selfish. They lack this ability to feel what other people are feeling because, as a response or for the fact that while they were growing up, nobody empathized with them. Nobody showed care for their emotions or their psychological or physical needs. They grew up thinking that that's okay, that's the way it should be. For you to be strong, for you to be tough, for you to get what you want to get in this life, you have to pay attention to only yourself. You can't focus on what another person needs. If another person likes, let them be crying, let them be in need of emotional support. The narcissist is not going to come true for you because he or she didn't get that experience. They were not allowed to even, empathize with themselves. Nobody empathized with them, so they can't give that to another person. Narcissists also have a strong sense of approval. When parents or caregivers were too harsh on them, and they had to do everything to get the approval of parents, caregivers, or family members, or others, they lend that same hand to their own family members, to their lovers, to their children. So everyone around them must meet their approval. Everyone around them has to meet a certain standard of, what they think is right. So as long as someone else is not doing something their way, then the person is doing it the wrong way. That's another impact that childhood wounds and childhood trauma have on us. They have the ability to. In addition to narcissism, is outright aggressive behavior. There are some children that, based on the level of abuse that was inflicted on them during their childhood, they just grow up aggressive. They just grow up angry. And some children, even if they weren't abused, in the case where maybe they were over pampered or spoiled, they have this sense of superiority towards others. They feel others should bow what they say to what they think and to what they need. Yeah, so if a child was over pampered, that could also be the case. But if a child was abused to a point where the child gets to think that, oh, the tough way is the only way, If up to be an adult that finds him or herself in a position of power or in a position of authority, be it authority in the home, in the office, and whatnot, there's a high tendency that aggression will be the order of the day. Everything they do has to be tough. It has to be tough love. Everything just has to be tough. There's no understanding, there's no compassion, there's no kindness. No. Everything has to be tough and aggressive. They are ready to blurt out anger, to blurt out insults against anyone, because there's this sense of, first of all, I'm superior. Second of all, if I don't do it this way, I'm not going to get my way. So I know some of us find it weird to engage in psychological practices because they are not our regular spiritual practices that we are used to. But just the same way we engage in spiritual practices to improve our spiritual life, it's necessary to engage in psychological practices that improves our mental health. So here are some tips that you can engage in to heal your inner childhood trauma. Number one is you can reflect on the timeline of your childhood. At your own quiet moment, think about your childhood, how it was. Was it pleasant? Was it something you regret? Are there so many moments you feel cheated, feel pain, feel abused? Are there so many moments you would want to rewrite? Would you prefer to change a lot that happened in your childhood? You can write all of it down. If you answer yes to many of these questions, if you have a lot of unpleasant memories from your childhood, then it's a sign that you need to work on yourself. Secondly, as an adult, you can write a love letter to your inner child, a supportive, kind, nurturing love letter. Most of the things you wish your parents or your guardians or caregivers would have told you, you can say that to your inner child in a letter. You can also write a letter from your inner child, stating your needs, stating your fears, your insecurity, how you feel unsafe. And you can write this back and forth as much as you can. You can read these letters over your private time, your quiet moments as much as you can. You can share your pain, your childhood pain, with a trusted source. It could be a friend or a therapist. Make sure that that person is not giving you any advice on how to fix your situation. Just try to get someone you can talk to as often as you can. Talking about our pain has a tendency of helping us to let go of it. You can engage in listening to affirmations. There are so many free affirmations on YouTube that help us rewire our brain. They help us change our perception of ourselves. There are so many inner child affirmations that you can listen to help you know, get those abuses off your subconscious mind. You can also engage in inner child meditation and visualization work. These are very, very useful tools. You can look them all up on the internet and you find helpful resources within these guidelines. If you find this video useful, like, comment, share. I would also like to say everything that I've said in this video is not conclusive, it's not exhaustive. It's not that this is the all that exists to childhood abuse or childhood trauma. No, you can add yours. Some of these signs, they are unique to some persons and some are not unique to some persons. So take what resonates with you and leave out what doesn't. Thank you and see you next time.